This is a revision video on Going, Going by Philip Larkin, who was born in Coventry in 1922. He was homeschooled until the age of 8 and developed a stammer. He studied at Oxford University and worked as a librarian in Hull, where he wrote many of his poems, and his poor eyesight meant he could continue his education during the war. He was influenced by Auden, Yeats and Hull. I thought it would last my time, the sense that beyond the town there would always be fields and farms where the village louts could climb such trees as were not cut down. I knew there'd be false alarms in the papers about old streets and split-level shopping, but some have always been left so far. And when the old part retreats as the bleak high-rises come, we can always escape in the car. Things are tougher than we are, just as earth will always respond however we mess it about. Chuck filth in the sea, if you must. The tides will be clean beyond. But what do I feel now? Doubt? So straight away, the title is really significant. So the idea of going, going, everything is concerned with the point of transition. The subsequent gone in the statement is implied, so usually you'd expect to hear going, going, gone. But the fact that Larkin omits the gone is really significant, and it suggests that this is the point of transition between England as it is and England being lost to the future, but that there's perhaps still a small chance of hope and of England being redeemed. In addition, going, going, gone is most commonly seen in, or most commonly heard rather, in an auctioneer's bidding statement. So perhaps it's the suggestion that England could be sold off, or it's some suggestion to do with markets and capitalism. And you can pick up on capitalist or anti-capitalist sentiment throughout the poem, so that's quite an interesting link. The previous optimism contrasts his realism and pessimism, so he thought it would last his time, but that is clearly wrong because the thought is in the past tense, so he feels like his optimism is gone and he's been left with realism and pessimism. The romantic ideals of provincial life, of living beyond the town and the fields and farm, are present, although they're then contrasted later on in the poem, despite the fact that Larkin is usually considered anti-romantic. The enjambment between the stanzas creates a sense of unease, so really the phrase should be, I knew there'd be false alarms in the papers, but the enjambment creates a kind of fracturing, and it's kind of a broken down rhythm, and this is quite confusing and doesn't feel resolved. Similarly, the rhyme scheme, which is fairly consistent, ABC, ABC, it feels unresolved, just like Larkin's sentiments and his concerns. There's the personification of modernity and nature, kind of almost giving them an identity. So the old part is retreating as the bleak high rises come. My Year 12's made an interesting point today about the idea of the high rises looking over everything, so almost physically, but then towering metaphorically over everything as well. The inclusive pronouns of we show that perhaps this is a shared problem, not just something that Larkin feels. So we can always escape in the car. It's a shared responsibility, and it's ironic that man can escape to the country through machinery. So through this kind of technology, through this kind of advancement in modern life that Larkin appears to be arguing against. There's the irony that he wants to escape from the towns, escape from modernity in the car. It's ambiguous as to exactly what Larkin is meaning when he says things are tougher than we are. Is that nature, or is that the products and materials that mankind is developing? And placing just at the end of that line is quite significant, because it could, although it belongs to the next phrase, just as earth will always respond, the fact that it's basically in the line means that you could almost read it, things are tougher than we are, just, as if they're only slightly tougher, and therefore that kind of changes the meaning of the statement, and that's something interesting that you should look at. There's a shared responsibility again, implied through we. Mess it about is colloquial, and if you must gives a sense of casual indifference at odds with the poem's tone, so that you get the sense that Larkin really cares about this. But chuck filth in the sea, if you must, is quite passive and quite indifferent compared to something along the lines of please don't destroy our environment, for example. Mess it about and chuck filth are very colloquial, passive, indifferent. The tides would be clean beyond, suggesting nature could renew itself. And the question that indicates his uncertainty, reflecting the doubt that is suggested in the line as well through that question. Or age simply, so this is kind of carrying on straight away, the enjambment. The crowd is young in the M1 cafe. Their kids are screaming for more houses, more parking allowed, more caravan sites, more pay. On the business page, a score of spectacled grins approve some takeover bid that entails 5% profit and 10% more in the estuaries. Move your works to unspoilt dales, grey area grants, and when, and the enjambment leads on to the next stanza. So the follow-up question about the doubt reinforces the doubt, and it introduces this conflict between age and youth as well. The crowd is quite an anonymous group, quite dehumanising in a way. And there's the conflict between age and youth, as just mentioned. The motorway roads and the fact that they're in the M1 cafe are indicative of urban development. And again, the colloquial kids perhaps shows a lack of respect. More houses, more parking. This listing increases the demanding effect. It's kind of a dismal repetition of the idea that society is never satisfied. The spectacled grins is synecdoche, where you are substituting a part of something when actually you're referring to the whole. So the idea that the spectacled grins are actually referring to these businessmen, and it's almost dehumanising, and it suggests that they're greedy as well. It would be interesting for you to consider how a Marxist reading of this poem is possible, particularly because there's an awful lot of anti-capitalist sentiment, and that would link in quite nicely. And you've got Larkin could be referring to the unspoilt dales ironically as a grey area. And I think the contrast is significant here. So the idea of an unspoilt dale being referred to as a grey area grant is really ridiculous, and I think Larkin is emphasising that. We've also got the pun on the word grey, perhaps to suggest old age, as well as kind of the literal meaning that it would be a grant for a depressed area. So I think there's an irony in these unspoilt, beautiful landscapes being described as depressed areas where commerce and economy needs to be generated. And when you try to get near the sea in summer, it seems just now to be happening so very fast. Despite all the land left free, for the first time I feel somehow that it isn't going to last. So you've got the breaking down of structure. It increases the pace to match the pace of change that Larkin is experiencing. The aposiopesis, this is a technique where something is left unsaid, and I think the phrase about in summer kind of tails off. So is it possible that summer is not existing in the same way? Is it possible that we can't get near the sea for whatever reason? But something is left unsaid, and I think that's interesting to look at. The irreverent tone in this stanza is an offhand comment, so that before I snuff it, the whole boiling will be bricked in, except for the tourist parts. First slum of Europe, a role it won't be hard to win with a cast of crooks and tarts. So he's listing the problems with England in his very cynical view. Boiling could just refer to the whole thing, the whole boiling, but it could also refer to streams and rivers being bricked over and controlled, and the effect of the word boiling is quite significant. It suggests, again, that point of transition, that point of transformation, and that you're somehow near the end at boiling point. And I think that's important. And that will be England gone. The shadows, the meadows, the lanes, the guild halls, the carved choirs. There'll be books, it will linger on in galleries, but all that remains for us will be concrete and tyres. Most things are never meant. This won't be, most likely. But greeds and garbage are too thick strewn to be swept up now, or invent excuses that make them all needs. I just think it will happen soon. So the nostalgic tone that we've seen earlier on in the poem, and this kind of contrast between the cynical tone and the nostalgic tone, it's re-established in this stanza, and he's listing things, he's outlining what is going to be lost, and the things that he feels are important. The roads and towns that I mentioned earlier on as the escape are referenced again as concrete and tyres, perhaps suggesting that escaping in the car is part of the later problem. The greed is leading to the garbage, and there's an interesting idea in the last stanza where Larkin says most things are never meant, this won't be, most likely. Does he mean the tone that he's been developing in this poem so far? Or is he kind of saying, maybe I'm being pessimistic? It's interesting to consider why he writes that. And the idea that humanity is at the point of being too late and it can't redeem itself. It's too thick strewn to be swept up. And the image of being swept up, again, it suggests that you're kind of brushing something away, that you're not dealing with the problem directly. Greeds and needs are cleverly placed together in the same stanza. And so often in modern society, we claim that we need something, whether it's an item of clothing, whether it's a chocolate bar or something like that, when it is, in most cases, it's not a physiological need, but it is just greed. It's a desire for something rather than a need. And I think that's been placed quite neatly together in that final stanza. And the powerlessness and despairing warning in that last line is really powerful, especially with the ending with the word soon and the idea that it's going to happen, and kind of linking with the initial title, Going, Going, Gone. It's just at that point of transformation, and it's almost too late to stop it. Larkin referred to himself as a divided self. It's interesting to think about whether he's been genuine in this poem, or whether he's playing devil's advocate and writing for another reason. So that's something quite interesting for you to consider.